Hello everyone. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Israel, perhaps the most controversial country in the world today. Despite its relatively small size and population, Israel plays an incredibly significant role in human history and global affairs. This fascinating nation is home to sacred sites of the world's three major monotheistic religions and has become a powerhouse of scientific and technological innovation. In this video, we'll explore life in Israel, delve into Jewish customs and traditions, discuss important things to know when visiting, and uncover many more intriguing aspects of this unique country, from the ancient streets of Jerusalem to the modern beaches of Tel Aviv, from its complex geopolitical situation to its cutting-edge tech industry. We'll take you on a journey through a land that is both ancient and new, controversial, inspiring. Israel is possibly the most controversial country that exists. When global events occur, such as wars, people talk about it, and even when the situation is peaceful, it is still discussed. Despite its relatively small population and territory, Israel houses a large part of human history. It contains sacred places of the world's three main monotheistic religions. Israel is one of the most powerful countries, has progressed the most rapidly. It has made countless scientific and technological contributions. At the same time, it is at the center of a permanent conflict in its region. It is one of the youngest sovereign states in the world, and at the same time, its creation is based on one of the oldest documents, the ancient scriptures collected in the Old Testament. Israel declared its independence in 1948, after the Arab-Israeli War of the same year. When World War I ended, Palestine emerged, whose territory had Muslims and Jews who were in constant conflict until the end of the war in 1948. That was when the Nakba, or Palestinian Exodus, began, and since then, both states have been in conflict. Currently, the state of Palestine has limited international recognition and is located in two regions bordering Israel, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Israel is the world's only Jewish state and is one of the most successful countries for several reasons. The first important Jewish diaspora occurred in 586 BC, known as the Babylonian exile. After the Babylonians conquered the kingdom of Judah, some Jews were deported into slavery. Jews have been a minority in the countries where they lived, which gave them an incentive to stand out. They also have a strong social network that allows them to help each other prosper in personal and professional life. Having few natural resources, they give more importance to educational and human development, similar to countries like Japan, Taiwan, or Singapore. Finally, because they have a relatively small territory, there is a high concentration of talented people, which makes innovation and intellectual cultivation easier. Israel is the only country in the world that has managed to revive a dead language. After the Jewish diaspora, the population began to use other languages. Hebrew continued to be used only for religious matters. With Jewish nationalism, Zionism began to recover Hebrew, and it is currently the official language of the state. Aramaic, on the other hand, is close to extinction and is spoken only in some localities in Syria. Both languages are written from right to left and from top to bottom. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and many common names have their origin in it, such as Sarah, Mary, Anna, Michael, John, or Raphael. Zahal is how the defense forces are known in Israel, and they have not yet lost a war. Despite its small population, Israel possesses one of the most powerful armies in the world, surpassing countries with many more inhabitants such as Canada, Spain, Vietnam, Thailand, Mexico, or Argentina. Its army is among the 20 most powerful in the world, and among these, Israel is the only country with less than 10 million inhabitants. It is believed that the state of Israel has nuclear weapons, between 80 and 400 nuclear warheads, and that it has the capability to use them with aircraft, missiles launched from submarines, and intercontinental and intermediate-range ballistic missiles. They also excel in the design and manufacture of drones, such as IIITAN, Elbit Hermes 900, Tactical Heron, and Bird Eye 650. If you go to Israel and walk through the streets of Jerusalem or on the beaches of Tel Aviv and observe armed people, do not be alarmed. Military service is mandatory, and it is common for Israelis to carry out daily activities while carrying weapons and wearing military clothing. Men serve for a minimum of 32 months and women for 24 months. They can serve in numerous units: mountaineering, underwater combat, Oket's unit, Shayatet 13, Dairet Matkal, Skylark units, Yahalom unit, among others. Among Israel's 3 special units, Shayatet 13 stands out, specializing in sabotage operations, maritime intelligence, rescues, boardings, and land and sea incursion. Another unit is the Skylark, which operates drones or unmanned aerial vehicles specialized in reconnaissance, surveillance, rescue, search, or transport. There is also the Maglan Elite Unit, which has participated in all wars and operations since its formation in 1982. The activities of this unit are classified, and, according to Israel, they can locate and destroy targets 20 kilometers away. Israel is one of the most technologically advanced countries, having more than 4,000 companies in this sector. 60 of the 500 largest technology companies in the world are Israel, ranking behind only the United States and China. Israel workers and companies have contributed to the creation of hardware for Apple and products for Google, Intel, Microsoft, among other large corporations. This is due, in part, to the fact that the state spends a good portion of its resources on research, in addition to the excellent Israel education and possibly competitiveness that characterizes the country and its citizens. Israel is the second country with the most university students, behind only Canada. Universities function as centers of teaching and research, educating students to take initiative in research and develop entrepreneurial skills. On the other hand, culturally, great value is placed on education, and adults encourage it in their children from a young age. There are some things you should not do in Israel, or that you should be aware of. Do not talk about politics. Due to the history of Israel and the Jews and their constant conflict, it is a complex subject that can lead to misunderstanding. It is also advisable that you know about kosher foods, which are allowed in Jewish tradition. Kosher animals are ruminants that have split hooves and do not crawl on the ground. Hare, camel, and pig cannot be eaten, and products derived from them are also not allowed. But there are other rules, such as the fact that Jews can only eat kosher food prepared by Jews, and that meat and dairy products not be mixed. Each kitchen utensil must be used to cook a specific. Do not touch Orthodox Jews of the opposite gender, because Orthodox Judaism laws prohibit contact with members of the opposite gender, except for spouses, relatives, or children. Something very important is not to go out to explore nature in Israel. It is a country in conflict, and there may be landmines. Also, dress modestly without showing too much, since there are many places considered sacred. Additionally, it is advisable not to bring religious books or writings in Arabic that might make you suspicious. The Hebrew calendar is lunisolar. For the month, it is based on the moon's revolution around the earth, and for the year, on the earth revolving around the sun. It begins with Genesis, first book of the Torah and the Old Testament, and consists of an algorithm of astronomical and mathematical calculations. The Gregorian year 2020 is equivalent to the Hebrew year 5780. Yom Kippur is the holiest day in Judaism, known as the Day of Atonement, Forgiveness, and Expiation. It occurs on the 10th day of the Jewish month of Tishrei. On this date, a fast of about 25 hours is performed as a way to show repentance for the bad deeds of the past year. A large part of the Israeli population does not follow this Jewish tradition, but there is no traffic on the streets, shops and restaurants are closed. If you go to a restaurant in Israel, leave a tip. It is expected, as waiters live more on tips than on salary. If you are satisfied with the service, it is common to leave 15% of the meal price or more, and if you are not satisfied, at least 10%. For Israel, its official capital is Jerusalem, and like the rest of the country, it is considered Holy Land. In the Six-Day War of 1967, Israel conquered the eastern part of Jerusalem and later declared it the eternal and indivisible capital. However, as punishment for this annexation, the United Nations countries transferred their embassies to Tel Aviv, which is the country's financial center. In 2018, by order of Donald Trump, the United States Embassy was transferred to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is considered a holy city by the three major religions of the world: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. It is the third holiest city in Islam, where for Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven, and where the first Muslims prayed before they started to do so, facing Mecca. If you go to Israel, you should keep in mind that etiquette norms will vary depending on who you are interacting with. The majority of the population has Western behavior, but there is also a Muslim population. Remember that for Muslims, the left hand is considered impure and is only used for personal hygiene, not for a Jew or Christian. In Jerusalem, you can find the Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives, one of the oldest in the world still in use. It has more than 150,000 tombs, some over 1,000 years old. The Western Wall is the holiest place in Judaism, located in Jerusalem, and it is believed to have been built in 19 BC by Herod the Great. Here stood the first temple of Jerusalem, or Solomon's temple, destroyed by the Babylonians, and the second temple, destroyed by the Romans. Some consider the term Wailing Wall disrespectful and use the name Western Wall instead. It is estimated that each year, Jews who come to pray leave more than 9 million prayer notes to God or personal wishes. Due to this quantity, Rabbi collects them twice a year, burn them near the Mount of Olives. The Israeli Postal Service has a special department for letters to God, for all the letters that arrive in Jerusalem from all over the world, addressed to God. They are opened and placed in the crevices of the Western Wall. There are almost 1 million per year. In Jerusalem is the holiest temple of Christianity, Church or Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre, or Church of the Resurrection, or the tomb in which Jesus Christ was placed after the crucifixion, is believed to be. Although no one controls the main entrance of this basilica, for centuries, 2 Arab families have held the privilege of opening and closing the building's door: Muslim Nusayba family and the Judah family. Their descendants are currently the ones who have the privilege of guarding the door. Inside the Church of the Resurrection, there is a small temple known as the Edicule, and inside it is where the tomb of Jesus Christ is located. A cave found inside the Edicule was discovered by the Romans, with the church being built in the times of Emperor Constantine. The sacred rock belonging to the tomb, which Christian pilgrims have been visiting for centuries, was covered, but recently it was exposed so that the walls can be seen from a window. According to the Bible, Jesus was born in Bethlehem, which is now in Palestinian territory, 10 kilometers south of Jerusalem. Over the cave where Jesus is said to have been born, a church was built, the Church of the Nativity, which is now open to the public. There is usually a long line to descend into the cave where the birthplace is believed to be. In Israel, there are Jews of different origins: the Ashkenazi, from Germany, Central and Eastern Europe; Sephardic, descendants of the ancient Jews expelled from the Iberian Peninsula in the times of the Catholic monarchs; and the Mizrahi, originating from the Middle East and North Africa. There are also African Jews, those from Ethiopia. Mea Shearim can be considered the most ideologically unique neighborhood in present-day Western Jerusalem. There live the Haredi Jews, ultra-Orthodox, easily recognizable by their black outfits with matching hats, as well as beards and long curled side locks known as payot. The hat that Jewish men wear is known as a kippah, and it is made of fabric or wool. It is a reminder that God is constantly above the wearer. Israel's fertility rate is very high compared to other developed countries, with almost 3 children per woman. Israeli policies help with this, providing advantages for mothers, and the high religiosity of the population also influence. Cultural and religious norms include marriage and having children. Additionally, ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jews contribute many children, with their women's fertility rate being the surprising number of 7 children per woman. The religious cultural norm of having several children is so consolidated in Israel that even women who work and are older decide to have children. Because of this, the country is one of the few developed nations that see their population increasing rapidly. Unlike countries that have a serious birth rate crisis, such as Spain, Italy, Greece, Japan, South Korea. The average salary in Israel is a little more than $3,000 per month, about 12,000 shekels for Israelis, which is well above the world average. However, the cost of living is also quite high. The belief that all Jews are rich is widespread, although this is more of a myth that could have spread as part of the propaganda of certain groups and countries. It is true that there are very wealthy people from Jewish families, such as Sergey Brin, one of the founders of Google, or Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. But in the United States, Jews are only 4 or 5% richer than the average American, and about 10% have below-average income. In Israel, you can find the lowest freshwater lake on Earth. It is the Sea of Galilee, which has a maximum depth of 48 meters and is 212 meters below sea level. From Jerusalem, it is also possible to visit the lowest saltwater lake on the planet, the Dead Sea, located 435 meters below sea level. Hanukkah, or the Festival of Lights, is celebrated in Israel to commemorate the dedication of the Second Temple of Jerusalem and the Maccabean Revolt. It lasts 8 days, starting in late November or December, according to the Hebrew lunar calendar. There, the 9-branched menorah, or Hanukkah, is lit, which appears on the country's coat of arms. Israelis consume about 23 million sufganiyot during the religious festival of Hanukkah, or Festival of Lights. It is a round donut that is first fried and then filled with jelly or cream and covered with powdered sugar. Israel is the country with the most museums per number of inhabitants in the whole world, having 280 museums, and still increasing the count. There are large museums of art, archaeology, and science, such as the Tel Aviv Museum of Art, the Tower of David in Jerusalem, or the Underwater Observatory in Eilat. Israel has its own Stonehenge. It is the archaeological site of Gilgal Rephaim in Hebrew, or Rujum el-Hiri in Arabic. It is a series of concentric circles that end in a tomb 4.5 meters high, all composed of more than 42,000 basaltic stone, with more than 5,000 years of antiquity. In the city of Ashkelon, the largest dog cemetery of antiquity was found, with more than 1,300 dog skeletons, most of them puppies of the Canaan breed, buried between the 5th and 3rd centuries BC. The Jewish Passover, or Hebrew Passover, is called Pesach, and it celebrates the escape of the Jews from slavery in Egypt. The festivity begins on the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, lasts 7 days, and the consumption of fermented foods based on cereals, called chametz, is prohibited. It is customary to eat an unleavened bread called matzo. When a child reaches what is considered personal maturity, Israelis celebrate the bar mitzvah, a ceremony in which the child reads the Jewish sacred scriptures in public for the first time. The age from which Israelis consider one to be responsible for their actions is 13 years for boys and 12 for girls. In Israel, all houses must have a security room, merhav mugan, capable of resisting attacks with chemical and biological weapons. This was established after the 1991 Gulf War, when Israel was attacked by Iraqi Scud missiles. Despite its relatively low population, this country has produced 8 Nobel Prize winners in sciences and 1 in literature. Additionally, the country leads the world in the production of scientific publications per capita. In Israel, there is no civil marriage, although the Israeli Ministry of Interior recognizes civil marriages celebrated outside its borders. The only recognized marriage is religious, whatever religion one professes. The New Year in Israel, or Rosh Hashanah, is celebrated in September or October depending on the Hebrew month of Tishrei. It commemorates the day when Elohim, or God, created the world, and the celebration begins with the sound of the shofar, a ram's horn, during the morning prayer. Candles are lit and feasts are held. Carmel wine is the oldest brand in Israel. It was first produced by the Palestine Wine and Trading Company, established in 1898. The different types or blends of this wine are identified with numbers that refer to different Israeli bus routes. The so-called White City in Tel Aviv is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in recognition of the more than 4,000 Bauhaus or international-style buildings that were built in the city in the 1930s. It is considered the city with the largest number of Bauhaus buildings in the world. The 7th day of the week and holy day in Israel is the Sabbath, which is celebrated from sunset on Friday until the appearance of 3 stars on Saturday night. On this day, one should not do any kind of work. Israel has its own martial art, Krav Maga, or contact combat. It is the official system of fighting and self-defense used by the Israeli Defense and Security Forces. It was developed by Emi Lichtenfeld, Czechoslovakian Jew, starting in the 1930s. In the Malha neighborhood of Jerusalem, there is a biblical zoo where you can find animals mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. It is also famous for its success in breeding endangered animals. The famous German scientist Albert Einstein, an icon of science, was Jewish, and in 1952 he was offered the presidency of Israel, but he refused. His argument was that he did not have the natural aptitude or experience to deal adequately with people. Due to the prohibition of cooking on the Sabbath, there are slow cooking styles to prepare a dish the day before that remains hot. These are the cholent of the Ashkenazi Jews and the hemin of the Sephardic Jews. The second largest bath complex of the Roman Empire was built in Israel. Spa lovers can relax in the ancient style in the 2,000-year-old complex in Hamat Gader. Matkut, which means rackets in Hebrew, is a popular paddle game in Israel, similar to beach tennis, which Israelis often refer to as their national beach sport. Israelis have a word for someone who is easy to manipulate, "Weir," which means fool. They always like to get the best of everything. Cheapest price, the best quality, and the fastest route. Throughout the country, there are 180 McDonald's restaurants, of which only 50 are kosher supervised. Therefore, they close on the Sabbath and Jewish holidays. The world's first kosher McDonald's opened in Mevasseret, Zion, in October 1995. In Israel, you will find one of the few existing underwater restaurants in the world. The Red Sea Star, located 5 meters below the waters of the Red Sea, has a capacity for 105 diners. Israel is the only country in the world that has more trees today than it did 50 years ago, due to an environmental policy of converting naturally desert areas into orchards and forests. Israel is one of the few national states that does not have a constitution. Fundamental laws are texts of constitutional character approved by the Knesset, or Israeli parliament, as chapters of a future constitution, since an agreement on the formal writing of this document has not yet been reached. In Acre, which was the great and last fortress of the Crusaders in the Holy Land, you can walk through the halls and tunnels built by the Knights Templar. If you want to learn about another country that is just as interesting or more interesting, check out this video, leave us a comment and a like if you enjoyed.